recorded now or like? Ah, yeah. Okay, we're up and running. So off we go, right? So just to tell you that this is part of a kind of a bigger week or a bigger series of events that are put on here every year in the west of Ireland by the Regional Drug and Alcohol Task Force. There's a QR code there on the screen, or you can maybe link into the WRDATF website. And there's a whole kind of page there that's devoted to the events of the week. So there might be some other things in there that would interest you. As you know, we have this event this evening, which is kind of a really interesting and important topic that we're going to be going through in a bit more detail. There's another one that might quite interest parents next Thursday, which is around the topic of sleep, which is another big health issue we're seeing with our young people. And just to give you a quick bit of a background in terms of this overall project called Planet Youth, which we operate here in the west of Ireland, it's a public health program led out by the Drug and Alcohol Task Force, and it's really trying to see can we get the what's known as the Icelandic prevention model to take effect or be of use to us here in Ireland, right? So it's the idea is that can we improve health outcomes for our young people by taking this preventative approach that was developed there and enhancing it. We're the lead agency, if you like, but there's a lot of kind of statutory organizations in the region that help support it. And that's the website. Most of what we'll be discussing and kind of resources and different bits and pieces will be up on the west.planetyouth.ie website, if you're curious about that. And this is why we sort of initiated this program that made a big news internationally, really, back in 2017 around the dramatic improvements in substance use rates for teens in Iceland. Lots of other impressive and important things changed as well along the way, and we're using that approach here in Ireland. We have some concerns around substance use. We can see other problems around things like screens and sleep and mental health and stuff, which I'll show you very quickly. And what's been happening here in the West is that we survey all of our teenagers in the West in our 90 schools and centres every 2 years using a very detailed questionnaire, or the Planet Youth questionnaire, that asks them very much about their lives in the round. That was the paper-based version. It's done online now. And it's trying to find out what are the risk and protective factors in the lives of our young people that we can use to make interventions and changes and improvements into these big areas. So the survey that they sit is very detailed. It takes them the guts of 45 minutes to fill it in. It asks them about their life at home, their life online, their hobbies, their sports, their substance use, their friendships, their school experience, their sexual health. Mental health is asked about in some detail. Adverse life experience are asked about. And what we're trying to do is take the voice of these teenagers at 15 and 16 to make improvements for the younger people coming behind. So these are our children as they're entering secondary school at 12, 13. But then we do a big piece of this project for the income and junior infant parents every year. And actually, that's just started today as it happens, which is a big distribution of kind of parenting information. We do very detailed reporting at a sort of municipal level of how our kids are getting on. All this is available on the website if you're curious. How are our teenagers getting on in Galway City and Galway County and so on, right? Very detailed reports go out to our schools also. We can see school experience of our kids, substance use behavior, peer group behavior, their leisure time, screen use, well-being, sexual health, differences between what the boys have to say and the girls, which I'll show you a little bit of. Cross-tabulations are the relationships between categories. Lots of information there, recommendations, conclusions, and so on. We do a teaching website called The Facts. We do a school transition website from 6th class into 1st year called Step Up Secondary, which is big time in a young person's life. That's a little bit what that looks like. We've done a very nice sort of teaching module around the topic of sleep. And I'm actually hoping to develop a new version or another teaching module, a simple teaching module around this topic of social exclusion. Won't go into that too much, but we then have very good local data and information that we can begin to see what things are changing and improving and getting better or getting worse over time. And we can see then trends for at a county level for Mayo, for Galway, for the city, for Roscommon. Just very quickly, these are trends for cannabis use in Galway City, which is improving. Drunkenness is not, though. This is one we'll be concerned. So binge drinking in our young population going up a bit. Galway City, for example. So it's just good to be able to track these things. This is Mayo kids getting enough sleep, or rather, these are kids in sleep deficit, which is basically less than 6 or less hours a night. So these are kids who are really struggling for their sleep. And you can see here, there, the difference between the boys, have to say, and the girls. So there's this significant difference between the boys and girls across a whole different variety of topics. On the right there, you'll see kids using social media for 3 or more hours a day. And that's been increasing with each passing survey. And again, you'll see the girls using more social media than the boys. Now, they will make it up with gaming. They're no angels by any means, but social media does seem to be a little bit more impactful around that area of mental health and a few other things. So there's problems with this increased social media use. This is kids reporting their mental health is good. You can see in 2018 where we started, the big dip during COVID, and then things have been improving steadily since. So we're not quite back where we were with the girls, but we're getting there. And then we do a lot of this information that goes out to parents every year, to our secondary school incoming first year parents and our national school incoming junior infant parents. So the office is currently looking like that. Actually, we've 4 TY students from Salerno have started helping with the junior infant booklet distribution today. So we're off for the hack, and around 7,000 of those will go out via 450 national schools in the region over the course of the next few weeks. And it looks a bit like that. I won't go into this in any detail. And then this is the first year parent, and 6,500 of those went out through our 80 post-primary schools in the region. The mainstream ones went out through September and into early October. Loads of good news, by the way, in the survey. Not all gloom and doom by any means. Their kids are doing well, but you can see the importance of some getting good routines in early and communication being so important. So it talks a little bit about that. The importance of keeping them going in structured activities, hobbies and sports really, really are important. Talks a little bit about where we're at for things like vaping, cannabis, nicotine pouches are a bit of a concern, as are vapes. And then this would be a big concern as well, the amount of alcohol our kids drink, and quite a lot of parental tolerance around that topic, and parental alcohol supply as well. And parent attitude is really important. It's very clear in the data. So this is parental disapproval, if you like, for cannabis, for smoking, for vaping, but for getting drunk. You can see here the kids have got far more free reign in that space, and they apply it wherever parental tolerance is dips, right? So screen use, as I said, is not great. There's sort of guidance around that. We have lots of phones in bedrooms at night. Unfortunately, 55% of them don't get enough sleep. And they're doing substantially worse. So 32% get 7 hours, and then 23% down here getting 6 or less hours a night. And because of that, they will struggle in all areas of their lives. This is a relationship between sleep, the amount you sleep, and good physical health, the amount you sleep and good mental health, and the amount you sleep and your enjoyment of school, basically, or school engagement score is dramatically tied in, as is every aspect of a young person's life, is really tightly tied into the amount that they're sleeping. This is our problem. Well, not all of it, but this is a significant issue. Phones in rooms is 80%. So something to be make note of, really. And we'd always be trying to encourage our incoming first year parents to have that rule around phones not making their way to the bedroom, and getting to know other parents in parental network, and get to know parents and new friends. So we do a lot of work there. There will be this follow-up webinar, as I say, on Thursday. That's not what tonight's about. I'm just kind of making you aware of that. That's available if you want to have a quick look on the website. And this is really what we're here to talk about. The topic is social exclusion. So this was really picked up more noticeably. It became very, very clear in the latest survey. Not that it wasn't there before, but just the way one of the questions was framed made it a bit more obvious that we were having a problem here. So the kids are asked about bullying, social exclusion, negative life events, mental health scales. These are kind of a general way, some of the questions that are asked around bullying. So were you ever attacked by a group, right? Have you ever been bullied by a group? Were you ever bullied at school by somebody? And were you ever rejected by your friends? Okay, so those are various questions that they're asked. And these are lifetime. So has this ever happened to you, right? And you'd be glad to hear that so this is from a regular point of view, the active bullying is relatively low. It's running at around 3 or 4% of kids. Now, it's horrible for that 3 or 4% of kids, but it's not, it's not a kind of a behavior that we're seeing a huge amount of. But that one at the end there, being rejected by your friends, is obviously quite a bit higher than the others, right? And if we look at this by gender, you'll see, break this down by male, female, we can see here on the left, being attacked by a group in your lifetime. Now, it's not recently, it's, at some stage in your life, 9% of boys will say that's happened, and 5% of girls. Have you ever been bullied by a group? It switches the other way around. Girls are more likely to be bullied by a group. They're slightly more likely to be bullied at school with somebody, but they're far more likely to report having been rejected by their friend group at some stage, right? And okay, so what does that mean? So there's a whole bunch of different things around related to mental health, but Some of them are validated clinical scales, which I'll show you in a second. Some are very simple questions. So this one at the start, they're asked, how would you rate your mental health? It's a very simple question, but it's an indicative question. It's a good one to have. And they're allowed to answer, my mental health is very good, it's okay, it's bad, it's very bad. And in here, what we're saying is these are the kids who said it's bad or very bad. My mental health is bad or very bad. It's 7% if you haven't been rejected by your friends, but it's 24% if you have been rejected by your friends, right? So that's quite the difference. Regular self-harm. So the kids are asked about, have you ever harmed yourself on purpose? And they can answer, no, never did that. Or you can say once, or they can say twice, they can say 3 or 4 times, or they can say 5 times or more. And these are the kids who say 5 times or more. And you can see it's 7% if you haven't been rejected by the friend group, and 22%. So that's a big increase there, obviously, as well. They're also asked a little bit about what would be called help-seeking behavior. So have you ever thought you could do with support for mental health issues, right? And then there's a follow-up question. Have you ever looked for help or support? So whatever you thought you might need a bit of help, have you looked for help with mental health supports? And these are the kids who answer yes to that question. So it's 12% of kids who've never been rejected by their friends would say they've actively looked for help or support with their mental health, and it's 32% if they have been rejected by their friends. So you're seeing very, very substantial differences between two sets of groups. And it's not a small number of kids. These slides are based on around just a little over 5,000 15 and 16-year-olds at the time of the last survey, 5,079 kids to be precise. So in the red here, you're looking at around 3,000 kids, just roughly, and in the yellow, you're getting up around the 2,000 mark. So that's a lot of kids, and they are quite different in terms of what they're saying about things like their mental health. Okay, I nearly finished, right? So these are more kind of what we call validated clinical scales. So there's one called the DASS, which asks 21 questions, and 7 of them can be scored for depression, 7 are scored for stress, and 7 are scored for anxiety. And they're all scored. You can have a normal, a mild, a moderate, a severe, or a very severe score on that scale. And this is so the depression scale. And what we have here is a combined severe or very severe. So any kid who said who scored severe or very severe off the DSS, and it's 4% of young people who hadn't been rejected by their friends, but you can see 16% if they had. WHO5 is called the WHO5 Mental Wellbeing Index, and it's 5 questions they're asked. And in theory, the idea of the WHO5 is if you fail or if you fall below this threshold, you would warrant a mental health assessment. That's what the World Health Organization says. We don't do that screening tool here in Ireland, but this is what it looks like. So 23% of kids fail the WHO5, or 44, as you can see. And the BRS is a resilience score. So you have a low score on this BRS resilience scale, 6 questions related to resilience. And Rosenberg is the last one there. That's 10 questions related to self-esteem, right? And those, you can have a low score, a low self-esteem score in the Rosenberg, or medium or normal. Can't remember which off the top of my head. It says medium or normal or high, right? And these are kids that would report a low score on Rosenberg, correlated against this, have you been rejected by your friends or not? So again, quite a very, really significant difference there. And it follows through then to substance use as well. So we can see here scores for lifetime cannabis use, for daily vapors, nearly double. And then this is one that we're always concerned about, is regular kind of binge drinking. So drunk in the last 30 days is 27% or 37%, depending. So lots and lots of differences. Okay, that's enough for me. I just wanted to set the scene a little bit to say we're talking about a lot of kids here, and we're talking about quite a substantial impact on their mental health. So it's something we need to be a little bit more respond to a little bit better, I think. We have a funding application currently to develop something of a teaching module around this topic of social exclusion. It's not really to the fore in the Beacon Alta, the anti-bullying procedures that schools operate to now. It's mentioned, but it's not really front and center of what goes on in that space. So that needs a bit of work. But one thing that we said could be really helpful to try and reach out to parents and see, is there some kind of additional information we could give to parents to help them respond to this kind of issue a little bit. Give them a bit more information and tools around it, really. Now, just before I hand you over to Malie, I just say I was recommended this book earlier on in the year, Johann Hari, Lost Connections, which is an interesting kind of book. I have to say, I'm enjoying it. Not quite at the end of it yet, but it talks about how this kind of exclusion can have impacts on our mental health and some ideas about some stuff that we could do to address that. So it's an interesting read. Again, I'll put it up on the in the PDF slides that go out later on in the week or early next week if anybody was curious for a bit of additional background reading. And that's it from me. If you want to send any questions in as we go, you'll see there, once again, it's info@planetyouth.ie is a very good way to do that, or you can stick them up into the Q&A and they'll come in anonymously. Nobody will see them, but Orla will be keeping an eye on that stuff. So I should have talked enough and hand you over to Malie. So thank you.
Can you see my slides just to make sure?
Yes,
yes, Malie.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for being here. It's just wonderful to speak to all of you on this really important topic about supporting your teen when they're feeling socially excluded. I suppose I come to this topic with both, I suppose, personal and professional experience. Just to introduce myself, I am a chartered clinical psychologist in Galway, and I've worked in the HSC for many years, and now I work privately. I also lecture in the University of Galway in the clinical psychology course. I am an author of the book Love In, Love Out, A Compassionate Approach to Parenting Your Anxious Child. And I'm particularly interested in educational, in kind of prevention models. And over the last 3 years, I've been involved in creating the content for the Lust for Life Schools program. I'm the psychological lead for that. And what's really positive is that we're now in 50% of primary schools. It's a free program offered to schools. And we are just piloting the first year program as we speak. It's called Rising Minds, and it should be available to all schools by next September, which we're really happy about. And a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about today will be in those programs. So, it might be something for you to look out for. Again, free to schools, and very much in line with the educational curriculum, because it was created by myself and a lot of educational consultants and a whole team that are well used to working with schools. So as Emmet said, he already went through some of the research with you in terms of the interesting findings about peer exclusion. And I'm going to talk to you tonight about how exclusion or rejection impacts on human beings and what can we do as parents to help our children. I have a 14-year-old who's in second year, and I have a 12-year-old in sixth class. And I can say that both of them they're both girls. Both of them have very much, come home and, told me times where they have felt excluded. And so it's certainly something that, and many clients have come into me and reported this about their kids and wanting to know how they should react. So I suppose that I'm hoping that tonight's talk will help. I will provide you, as Emmet said, I'll give you a PDF of all my slides within the coming week, so that you don't have to write any notes or anything like that. You can just listen, if that's okay. So as the Planet Youth research would tell us, that many teens report feeling left out or rejected by peers. Girls more than boys report higher levels of peer rejection, although we also saw some boys reporting it. Those who feel excluded are more likely to experience, as Emmet said, low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, and in some cases self-harm. And as a psychologist would always say, correlation does not imply causation. And what that means is that just because two things happen at the same time in the data doesn't mean that one thing causes another. However, we do know for sure that peer rejection, like the feeling of belonging, is one of the most important feelings and needs that we have as human beings. So when we feel as human beings that we don't belong, or that we're being excluded from our social group, because we are mammals at the end of the day, we are born to live in tribes, and when we don't feel we're part of that tribe, it really impacts on us, and even more so for teenagers, because of their brain development at the time. So the experiences often interact with other stressors in a young person's life. So let me give you an example. You could have somebody who perceives they're being excluded, and so that might make them socially withdraw from the group. And then that might make them, for instance, choose another group who they may not have chosen in the first place, but maybe that group might be more the group that gets into, they're all at a different at a stage of identity formation. So they might go to a group that they might not otherwise have joined, and that could lead to other situations. So what I'm trying to say is that there can be there's an interaction between all of these. And then, if you have lower self-esteem, you're less likely to put yourself forward in a group. And it can be a vicious cycle, as we know as parents. And behind every statistic, we've been speaking a lot about statistics, is a young person who feels, I'm sorry, now you can't see that, unseen and unsupported. So, I'm very much like all about the compassionate approach, and very much kind of saying to you, parent to parent, that this is really hard stuff, because it literally cuts at the core of what we do as parents, which is protecting our children, not wanting them to experience pain, wanting them to feel included, to have friends. All I wanted for my daughter on Halloween night was to know that she had a few people she could trick or treat with. And boy, was that not an easy lead up, you know, and it's really hard. It's really hard, particularly if you might have several kids, and one of them for which it's not an issue at all, and they, like, friendships seem to be maybe come a lot easier in a way, but all our kids are so different. And then there might be another child you have that for whom it doesn't come as easy, and that's certainly the case in my home. And it's really hard. It is really hard. And so it's kind of like, how do you react, right? Um, so I'm not even going to go through the stats here. Emmet has already kind of talked to you about that. So the power of belonging. Belonging gives young people a sense of safety and connection. I matter and I have a place in the world, right? And that's the same for all of us, by the way, as human beings. It is the most, as I said, important thing for us. It's a buffer against stress and anxiety. Being in a tribe, being in a group, it is a buffer, against stress and anxiety. It's just the way our makeups are. It gives us the confidence to explore and take risks. It's a foundation for resilience and emotional well-being, and it gives us the courage to be ourselves. Belonging isn't a luxury. It is oxygen, sorry, for the teenage brain. So literally, it is not like, this stuff we're talking about, when I first heard about this potential for a talk, I was like totally down up my street, because like I see this in every single, like I see adult clients, teenage clients, and this comes up time and time again in the work that I do with people. I'm sure you've all heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or maybe you have. If we're just belonging sits at the heart of human well-being. So at the very lowest, we need to have our physiological needs met, like air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction, right? The next thing is safety, our personal security, employment, resources, health, property, having things, like being able to live in the world. Next is love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. And then you move on to things like self-esteem, recognition, and then self-actualization, which is your desire to be the most that you can be. If love and belonging are not there, if we're not feeling that sense of love and belonging, right? And for teenagers, their peer group is so important, as we know. If they're not feeling that sense of love and belonging, then it's really hard for them to reach the esteem and the self actualization of Maslow's hierarchy. He's basically saying that our needs go from here, from down below to all the way to the top, and we can't get to those higher level needs unless we have love and belonging. And actually, safety needs are also very important here, because when we feel socially excluded, we feel unsafe in the world, and safety is the most important thing that we need as well. So inside the teenage tricky brain, I often call it the teenage tricky brain, but I also say it's an amazing brain because I don't want to just, make like it is the brain the way it's designed to be, and but rejection gets amplified, unfortunately, because they're exploring their identities. Who am I? Do I fit in? Where do I belong? Heightened social radar. They're hyper aware of their peers. They're hyper aware of social comparison. We all compare ourselves to each other, by the way. That's completely normal. But for teenagers, even more so. FOMO, fear of missing out. Can you imagine? I can't even imagine being a teenager nowadays and seeing my friends post on Snapchat how they're out in town together at the Christmas market or whatever they're doing. Imagine what that's like for a teenager. Like that you can feel socially excluded by just lying in your bed and looking at your phone. Whereas in my day, I didn't know what my friends were up to. Do you know? So it really is very difficult. Um, they crave belonging and they fear exclusion. Negativity bias on overdrive. The brain holds on to rejection more than praise. It's just the way our brain is designed. It's like Velcro for the negative, Teflon for the positive. Um, we have to. If how many of you are on this call? 443, say, right? If 442 of you said Malie did a great talk, and one of you said that was the worst talk I've ever heard in my life, what a waste of time, who would I be thinking about tomorrow? The one person who said it was a waste of time. And by the way, it's totally fine if you think so, or if met more of you think so. But what I mean is that is just the way our brains work to keep us safe. And that's what's happening with your kids as well. They're thinking more of it's when you hear things like I never get invited to things. It's always like this. These are kind of black and white thoughts. This is negativity bias. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about teaching these concepts to teenagers in the Lust for Life program that I'm working with at the moment. And I think these are things that we can teach our children as well, is that this is normal. This is normal. This does not make you abnormal. This is normal to want to belong. It's okay. We all want to belong, and it really hurts when we feel excluded. I've left WhatsApp groups, for goodness sake, when I feel excluded, and I'm a 49-year-old woman. So, it's just universal, right? Emotions take charge, intense feelings, stress feels stronger. It's harder to think clearer when we're teenagers. And our reward centers are supercharged about like relating to peer approval and risk taking. So I call it the perfect storm, the teenage life, or the teenage years, because you've got modern life meeting the tricky brain. So we've got our tricky brain where you have the negativity bias, the social comparison, and then you've got the modern life, technology, all the pressures, going into school, you have to perform, thinking about how am I going to afford a house later on? How am I going to get we're all on overdrive in society. It's all about being more, wanting more, getting more. And it's really a lot of pressure on our teenagers. There's a lot of focus on results rather than process. And teens feel there's studies done to say that teens feel less in control of their lives now than they did 30 years ago. And so having a feeling of less control in your life actually also contributes to lower, like less positive mental health. Because you don't feel empowered. So I suppose my approach to peer rejection is very much one of empowerment, but we can't go to empowerment until the child feels validated. Um, so some young people, and I really want to acknowledge this, that some young people face extra barriers to belonging in terms of difference. So being of a different race or culture, identifying as LGBTQIA+, being neurodivergent, there's a lot more diagnoses taking place, a lot more awareness of that now, living with a disability, or not fitting dominant social norms. When difference is celebrated, um, sorry now, I'm trying to see the full quote. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But it's all about celebrating difference, I suppose. Um, yeah, sorry. When difference is celebrated, belonging deepens for everyone. Okay. And so it's really important to kind of acknowledge that it's extra difficult for some kids. And I'm just thinking of like when children or when teens go into first year of school, it's of secondary school, they are literally like holding on to any peer group that they can. It's a new environment. They're trying to figure out who they are. They're trying to figure out, they pick their friends dependent maybe on how those friends make them feel, but they're not very selective about those friends in first year. It's very much like, I will literally hold on to anything or anybody just for a sense of safety. And then in second year, I find just as their brain starts to prune, which means that the connections that are no longer as valuable kind of start to waste away and they make new connections, right, with their brain, so do their emotional connections and their friendship connections. And this can unfortunately lead to episodes where people can feel quite excluded because the friend that they had in first year doesn't want to like hang out with them anymore. And you're kind of, why is that? And unfortunately, that it is a common occurrence. And I think the fact that there's like 444 people here tonight will show you that you are not alone as a parent in having experienced your child. And I know you're here because your child has experienced this in some way and you want to do your best to help them. And so just even knowing that there's that many other people in your shoes shows you that this is a common human experience. That I'm not trying to uh like lower it or minimize it in any way, shape, or form. It's just to let you know you're not alone. Okay? You're not alone. And it's really hard. So why rejection hurts so much? Brain processes the social pain just like physical pain. The moments feel big for our teens because they are, because it is like physical pain. It can lead to low self-esteem, anxiety, withdrawal, addiction issues. That's why it's really important that the Western Regional and Drugs and Alcohol Task Force are actually including this social rejection as part of their talks because, disconnection, as Johann Hari talked about in his book that Emmet quoted, disconnection can lead to addiction issues. You're trying to find connection through addiction. Um, Rejection can cause overcompensating behaviors, trying too hard to fit in, masking, people pleasing. It can have a stronger impact for neurodivergent teens who might be experiencing rejection sensitivity, where like something that mightn't be feel as big to someone else will feel even stronger to them because of how they process sensory information. And like, I think there's a question that has come in for later where I will be answering a question about a child who's dyspraxic. And that the answer to my question will also kind of help people who have kids who are ADHD or autistic or any type of neurodivergence. Rejection hurts so much because it leaves parents feeling helpless and young people feeling isolated. And our tricky brains are wired to notice threats. For teenagers, social threat is one of the biggest. A single moment of exclusion can feel catastrophic. So it really can. And to a parent, to you listening to it, you might think, oh, sure, that's, sure, it'll be grand tomorrow. And don't you have those other friends? And because we don't want to feel their pain, right? We don't want to feel their pain. It's too hard to witness our children's pain. And very often we try to get into action mode and go, or else we might do the, who said that? And how dare they do that? And there's a bit of that can take place in the comfort of your own home, like very much like that's awful that happened to you and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, how can we find the balance between validating their feelings and empowering them along the way as well with that? Because they're teenagers. We're trying to prepare them for the outside world. So there's a ripple effect of peer rejection and a referral increase for that I have found. It's cited in a lot more referrals coming into me have peer rejection as part of it. Many teens struggle with in-person communication because so much happens online. There literally is, and part of our Lust for Life first 3 lessons for first years is all about listening and communication, because they don't have the same comfort with picking up the phone, answering it, going into a shop, asking for things, in-person communication, how to start a conversation, how to say thank you, how to, all these things. The legacy of COVID has amplified this. They have missed key social learning years. When you think of our children who experienced being at home during those years, it did impact, and it still has residual impact for people of all ages. Our village has shrunk. Teens need help rebuilding their sense of tribe and their shared humanity. Our teens are more connected than ever, but feel lonelier than ever. The virtual world replaces the real village they need, which models empathy, presence, and care. So, I think it's important to acknowledge that. So I think like, and I am conscious of time, and I really want to get through like the action points of this presentation. But there is a difference between peer exclusion and bullying. Okay, so like I know that like peer exclusion is being left out or not invited. It can be unintentional, situational, linked to changing interests or group dynamics. Short term, it might repair. Some parents report about, oh, my child said they're rejected by this person this week and they're best friends the following week. That's one of the questions that's come in. I've noticed that with my kids as well, where it's like they can feel really strongly about, oh God, that person was so mean to me, and then suddenly they're fine again a couple of days later, and you've gone down the road of like, oh my God, they're so mean to you, and then kind of then they're best friends again, and you're like, what the heck is going on, right? So, but just to say, there is a difference, and bullying is more like a repeated and targeted behavior with intentional harm or humiliation. It involves a power imbalance. It causes ongoing fear or distress. It's different, okay? In both instances, I would say to you that most important is to stop, to take a step back and not act immediately. And I know when it hurts you so much when you hear your child in distress, but bullying may definitely require more kind of an adult intervention where you will talk to your child, and I said with their consent, because I don't suggest going straight in somewhere and doing it without your child's knowledge of what you're doing, because I think that's going to impact on your relationship in a negative way. But I would say that for peer exclusion, listening, validating, helping them to find belonging elsewhere with you and elsewhere, I would say is more important. Because emotional storms when something feels catastrophic for them, they're going to come to you with a catastrophic reaction to it. And you might immediately kind of go, oh my God, this is catastrophic. But actually, it may come right again. Okay, just letting you know that there is a difference. This is where our compassion as parents really matters. In many cases, we cannot stop rejection from happening, and in a way, we have to acknowledge that rejection is a felt feeling, and maybe that's why it hasn't been researched that much. It is not like, as in bullying, particularly when there's like physical forms of bullying or something is said, but like I'm not saying that, peer rejection cannot be an indirect form of bullying, but it needs to be intentional, and it needs to be done repeatedly with harm and directed towards a person with a power, and there being in power imbalance. That's the difference. But we can help our children regulate and rebuild that inner sense of belonging. We can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. And so we need to learn to surf with them together. So when we regulate ourselves first, we give our children the safety and strength to face hard times. I'm literally going to be asking you to do the opposite of what you feel like doing. Get ready, okay? Because but I'm going to meet you where you're at, because I understand. And so I love the self-compassionate kind of compassion-focused therapy approach. And I suppose mindfulness is all about recognizing when we're stressed or struggling without overreacting or being judgmental towards ourselves. Common humanity, the third one, is recognizing you're not alone in the what you experience. And self-kindness is about being supportive and understanding towards yourself. I would say those three things are really important for ourselves and for our children when we're dealing with peer rejection. The first quote in my book is not my quote, but I think it's probably one of the best quotes I've ever heard. The parent-child relationship is the most powerful mental health intervention known to humankind. This is why I do what I do with children. Because and this is by no means to say to you, you are to blame if your child is struggling, or or to put pressure on you. Oh my God, this is on my shoulders. Like, holy crap. No, I'm not trying to do that at all. But what I'm trying to say to you is that you hold so much power. I have heard a psychiatrist once say, we overparent our under 10-year-olds, we underparent our over 10-year-olds. We might think just because they're in their bedrooms on their phones and doing things independently that they're fine. But actually, they need us. I need you now more than ever, but they need us in a different way. What is resilience? We talk a lot about that. It's all about balancing a teenager's negative experience with positive supports. And difficult emotions are an opportunity to connect with our teenagers, to find out what lies behind their feelings and behavior. They are, by the way, when a child is stressed, or a teenager, they are not only releasing cortisol, which is the stress hormone, they're also releasing oxytocin, which is the love hormone. So when they come to you saying, I'm stressed and I can't believe this happened, and she was so mean to me today and it was the worst, blah, 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 they are seeking support and connection from you. They're not seeking a solution. They're not seeking you to fix it. They don't need you to do anything in the moment. They just need you to hear them. That is what their body is seeking from you, their brain chemicals. And how caregivers respond has a significant impact on how they cope and the impact it will bear on them physically and emotionally. Um, Sorry, now, just trying to, and I know there's another comment down there, but anyway, I'll leave that. So Gabor Mate has a brilliant book called Hold On to Your Kids, Why Parents Need to Matter More Than Peers. Now, of course, our teenagers are very interested in their peers, and that's a normal developmental kind of task for them to be that way. But I suppose what he's trying to say, and he's a trauma-informed therapist, he's trying to say that we need to hold on to them in ways and not just think that they're doing fine. We need to support them. You have more influence than you think. In my book, I have what's called an acronym, which is SAFE, right? And it was kind of looking at how to parent an anxious child, but arguably it could be used for any emotion. And as we know, peer rejection can very much cause anxious type of symptoms. So the S is for self-care or self-compassion, and I'll go through this with you. So it's basically kind of giving us instruction on how to react to a difficult emotion with our children. And what I would say is safe. So self-compassion first, checking in with yourself. How are you feeling in this moment? Your child has just told you that they were going to go trick-or-treating with a friend, and the friend has now said to them, sorry, there's no room for you to come with us, and you're not coming. This is what happened like a week and a half ago in our house, right? So right? So self-compassion. How do I feel in this moment? What's this like for me? How can I steady myself right now? How can I anchor myself? The next step is anchoring your child with their emotions. The next step is feeling felt, which is from Dan Siegel, amazing kind of neuroscientist. And it's only then that we can get to the problem, the solutions, all of that. We need to start with self-compassion, and then we move through. And this is a trauma-informed approach. It's about like the kids cannot take in information or learn or problem solve if they don't feel safe in their bodies. But they can't feel safe in their bodies unless we help them to feel safe in their bodies. So if you're screaming out loud saying, oh my God, that person's so mean, I am going to go into that school tomorrow and I'm going to tell them, I'm going to ring their parent and tell them, oh my God, like this is the worst thing in the world, your child's not going to feel safe in that moment. Okay, so that's kind of, so self-care, self-compassion, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So it's important to take care of yourself. It's important to work on yourself. If all this stuff is difficult for you, if, as Viktor Frankl says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. I have messed up so much in that space, I cannot tell you. how many times I've messed up, okay? But all my the thing that makes me feel better is that I know that secure attachment, which is what we want with our kids, a third of the time we're tuning into them. We're understanding what they're saying, they're getting us, we're tuning in, right? A third of the time is rupture. Something just doesn't work. You know, I told my daughter yesterday, no, you can't go to that Apollo disco in a few weeks because you're going to miss a dance rehearsal, blah, blah, blah. That was a rupture, okay? And then a third of it is repair. Repair is literally the fertile ground upon which healthy brain connections are made. If you are able to repair in your household with the people in your household explicitly and saying, I am sorry for saying that, or I, you know, and really not using a but at the end of an apology, it is so valuable to our children, right? And it kind of helps them to learn to repair with their friends and to expect repair in relationships as well, and to know what relationships don't, you know, if my friend never apologizes for something, then maybe I don't know if they're really the kind of friend I want to have, right? So I guess I just want to let you know that, you know, even if you get one thing from this talk, it's the importance of repair. And I know it's really difficult for some of us because for many of us, this was never done in our households, but it's really important. Okay. Um, Recognizing when we need soothing. So the capacity for self-soothing for a parent is born out of hundreds and hundreds of instances of being soothed by someone else. So if you find it difficult to soothe yourself and to be compassionate towards yourself, it is because it was never done for you. It wasn't done for you in a consistent enough way. That's not to say you're doom and gloom forever. We can earn security in our lives. We can go to therapy and, you know, look at those patterns. We can meet really good friends and people in our lives that can help us to feel soothed again and to feel valued as people. But what I'm saying to you is if that self-compassion part is really hard for you, there's a reason, and maybe it's important to explore that. And it's also important, by the way, to recognize when we need soothing. So, right, this is my cup. Okay, can you see my cup? If I am not looking after myself on a daily basis at all, you know, and kind of, and sometimes looking after myself might be, I'm going to go for a walk now. And you know, my child might need to be on a screen for another 5 minutes, or I'm going to, what I do sometimes when I work away from home is as I just park the car near the house and go for a walk, knowing that I'm going to be a far more able mommy when I walk in the door than if I hadn't looked after myself, because you are going to combust if you don't regularly fill your cup throughout the day. So self-compassion is the attitude you have towards yourself, and self-care are the practices that you do. And sometimes it can be as simple as, and it's not simple, but my book is called Love In, Love Out. When you're going through an SHIT hard parenting moment, I'm not going to curse. What we do is we breathe love in, we pause, and we breathe out. And the power of the breath when your child says something to you that's really hard, even, you know, is so, it literally fills you with a better decision making around just being able to listen. Nobody's expecting you to react or to do anything in that moment. You and anchoring them when their storm, when your child's storm meets your calm, co-regulation occurs. So how can you be a calm boat for your child? Um, Looking at what's happening inside your nervous system when they tell you what's going on for them. Do you know? So what do you need right now to feel safe yourself? And in terms of their own anchoring strategies, there are things that can really help kids when they're feeling really dysregulated. And sometimes it is the kind of breathing in and out and that kind of thing. I find that, you know, when they have like a lot of like cortisol in them, that getting up and shaking on purpose can be helpful. Sensory stuff can be really helpful for them. Getting a hug, or, you know, maybe a butterfly hug is like, you know, so like literally, you know, kind of engaging with them by, you know, doing things that can help their bodies to feel safe in a moment is really important. Dan Siegel talks about move it or lose it. So move it or else lose your temper. I don't know how, I know when I'm kind of kind of really stressed, I know that moving really helps me to disperse that. Feeling felt. This is Dan Siegel's idea again. It's the idea of the four S's of attachment. He talks about children, the importance of children feeling safe. So where children feel safe and are protected from harm. They need to feel seen. Parents are empathetic. They work to understand and respond to their child's inner experience. They need to feel secure. Parents are a secure base for their child from which to explore and a safe haven for them to return. And soothed. Parents are present and attentive when their child is distressed. Soothed children learn how to understand and regulate their emotions. The quality of your relationship with your child provides them with a psychological immune system for threats. Threats are going to happen. I'm telling you this. They will, feeling rejected, and I know it happens more for some children than others. I'm not trying to discount that at all. However, that relationship you have with them at home will provide them with the psychological immune system. So even if it's like thinking to yourself, God, this self-compassion stuff, I'm finding that really hard. Like maybe I need to look into that a bit more, what she said, or else it could be, we hardly ever like repair after a row in the house. We just sweep it under the carpet. Or it could be, oh, I never breathe when my child says, that they're in distress. I always go straight to action mode because I can't hear that. Those are like, that's what I'm asking you to do is pause, just pause. Sometimes the best thing we can do is nothing. And to breathe. How did you soothe your baby when they're little babies? You just breathed and you just kind of went, and they're the same. I know they're teenagers, but they're not immune to that kind of, let's talk about it for a little while and let's just lie on the bed and I don't know, have a chat, or let's go for a walk together or whatever else. Do you know what I mean? So as I said, these are things that work with teenagers. Sideways chats. So they say that having, rather than like face to face, tell me how you feel. It's kind of like when you're on a walk, when you're in the car, you might get more information than you might otherwise get. Be curious, not judgmental. Don't jump in there immediately. Let them tell you the story of what happened. Okay? Being a teenager is hard. Okay? So put yourself back to being a teenager again. And what was it like for you when you felt rejected? What did you need from your parent? Did you need them to jump straight in? No. You needed them to listen to you. That's what you needed, because they're not going to get that anywhere else. They're only going to get that at home, right? They might get that from friends, but you're the caregiver, And just be mindful for miscues. Your child, your teenager might say, I don't want to talk. Like, get out of my, I don't want to. And they're really, that's a miscue. That's not really telling you how they really feel. So that's not a good time in that moment. But come back to them. Knock on their door in 15 minutes, half an hour, and see. They could be feeling in a different mode at that stage. Would you like a cup of tea? Would you like a biscuit? I do a lot of my communication with my teens when I do their hair, for instance. Oh, can I have a plait? Can I have whatever else? And offer to help doing something like that and see, can you get a bit more out of that. Unpacking a worry. When they say, oh, this is all terrible, unpack it. What part of it is terrible? Tell me a bit more about that. Empowerment. So, basically what I've talked about is kind of regulating your own system, regulating your child's nervous system, helping them to feel felt, validated, safe, soothed, seen in a particular moment. And then we can move on to, how do they handle it? How do you handle it? Okay. So whose opinion matters most? Mapping out whose opinion truly matters builds perspective, self-worth, and resilience. So there's your child, right? So map out with them, what are their circles of influence in their lives? Whose opinion really matters? Because the person on social media who doesn't know them, the person who, who's out in this gray circle, does their opinion really matter? Do you know what I mean? Somebody that doesn't know you, does their opinion matters? And, whilst they might be having a friend that they really wanted to be friends with, but that friend really, they don't kind of really like them much, but they were mean to them, how important is that person in their lives right now? They might have been important, but do they really value that person's judgment? So this can be a useful little exercise to do. You can do it by drawing, or you can use little figures to do that. Exploring thoughts. I know that's but distorted thinking, all or nothing. It's also called black and white thinking, seeing things in extremes with no shades of gray. Things are either 100% amazing, 100% terrible. You could have a oh my God, catastrophizing, expecting the worst possible outcome. Overgeneralization, mind reading. This, you'll get all these in your slides, but basically exploring thoughts. But you're not going to start by exploring your child's thoughts. This is only when they are calm. You are not going to do, and sometimes this is best left for a therapist to do, or for them to do this kind of thing in school. But sometimes it can be helpful to kind of have a second point of view. So when your child says, "Oh, it was all terrible," kind of, kind of deconstructing that a bit. Silencing your inner bully. Many kids have an inner bully that says, I'm so bad at this. They will never like me. I suck. Other people's opinions are right. I can't do that. Normalize the inner bully. We all have the inner bully. It's there to keep us safe. But we can have kind of healthier thoughts. If I keep at it, I will improve. I'll be myself. And if we vibe, cool. I can consider other opinions, but should form my own. I just need to spend time on it to succeed. So what we're not trying to get rid of the inner bully. It's there to keep you safe. We're just trying to silence it and have a slightly kinder voice take its place. Mantras. I love these. I do them all the time, right? So when I'm about to do a presentation, or when I'm really nervous about something, I'll say, Malie, you got this. You got this. You can do this. You got this. Get your child to come up with their own mantra. I am safe. My voice matters. I got this. I am strong. I am so cool. Whatever it is. But just, have that. Show them what your mantra is. We all hopefully have them. They're really important. Helping them build their community. And I'm nearly finished my slides. Teens may need many safe adults, not just parents, to feel seen and supported. A wider network protects mental health and builds resilience. Encourage shared activities, creative projects. I know my kids are part of musicals, less so sports nowadays, more like musicals and dance and things like that, right? So clubs, volunteering, pets. I mean, I don't know if you're into like animals, or, like cats, dogs, birds, whatever it is. But all I know is when they find a passion, try to kind of nurture that for them. You don't need 20 best friends or 20 friends. Even having one or two people that you get along with is hugely protective. Okay. So you're trying to be an ally to them. Sorry, I lost the bottom of my slide. So you're celebrating kind mentors, teachers, coaches, relatives, friends. Oh yeah, allow them their space. I see there. So like allowing them their space is really important as well. So sometimes, like, say if kids have been masking all day in school and people pleasing, they just need their own space when they get home, and they might have an explosion. I hear of many parents saying to me that their kids will sometimes combust when they get home, and that's because they've been acting all day, and that's okay too. Maybe that's not the time to try to speak to them. Give them their time for chill. Model being a villager, show empathy, reach out, include others. Listen, I went to a do the other night. I walked into a room full of tables of people who knew each other. I felt so awkward. I was like, oh my God, who am I going to talk to? How am I going to do this? I'm here to spend an hour to wish somebody a happy 50th birthday, but I feel so awkward. I told my kids that. I told them that and said I felt really awkward. So what I just kind of did was, I knew there'd be less people out in the smoking area. So I didn't go and smoke, but I certainly did go and chat to the three people that were there because I felt more comfortable doing that. So sometimes you're not in the mood that doesn't make you an alien that you find those things hard. So tell your kids what you find hard and how you manage the situations. You don't have to be liked by everyone to belong to somewhere. And believe me, I'm certainly not liked by everyone, and your kids aren't, and none of us are, and that's okay. You know what I mean? We're not all going to be liked all the time. Role playing difficult situations. Play is the rehearsal space for courage. That's a power pose. assertiveness scenarios, role play. And I'll give you an example of that now when I come to the example I have. Find out what your children's core values are. What are they really passionate about? Because at this time, even though there's a lot of tricky things going on with their brains, there are amazing things going on with their brains. They are becoming human beings and who with likes and things that they love, and figure out what those things are and encourage those in them and really show interest. Show me what you're looking at. My daughter came in with the dress she's wearing to a disco in a few weeks, and I almost died about an hour ago. But like, I had to like, I'm still trying to show interest. I have to see whether I'm gonna let her wear that. But it's kind of like you put yourself in their shoes again, what it was like to be a teenager. Parenting, perfection isn't possible. Be good enough and learn more every day. None of us are perfect. Remember, I said, as long as you're getting it fairly okay 2/3 of the time with tuning in and repair, the ruptures will improve. It'll be okay. Three pillars of good enough caregiving: learning to trust your gut instinct as a parent, letting go of the fallacy of perfection. What's going on social media is not true. Nobody has the perfect life. Get to know yourself and prioritize self-compassion. And I'm just going to give you a quick case example before we move on to questions. I suppose it'll be a very quick one. So this is a case of a girl, Ella, who went to dance camp, and she found that girls were being really mean to her. She really wanted to be part of this dance camp, and she was younger than the rest of the people that were there. It was her first big chance to do something she loved, but her roommate Lucy began excluding her, teasing her about not having social media, and once said at dinner, look, the girl speaks. Everyone laughed. Ella phoned her mum in tears. Her mum wanted to drive there immediately. Ella begged her not to. Mum paused, stayed calm. She sent kind messages, arranged a rest break for the daughter. So she didn't immediately go and rescue her, even though her instinct was to. The daughter was reporting that she loved this dance camp, but that this roommate of hers was just being really mean to her. And every instinct told the mom to swoop in and protect her child, but instead she paused, took a breath, chose connection over reaction. She stayed steady, and that calm presence gave Ella strength. She stayed in touch with her every night, made sure that she did feel safe enough to remain there, because actually jumping in could have caused a lot more embarrassment for Ella, could have led to worse outcomes in terms of being made fun of in the future, may have cost her a place on a future dance camp, all of those things. So again, I'm not saying to you, ignore all the time. What I'm saying to you is, by jumping in, you might disempower your child. So manage your own feelings and then help them to calm, and then see where they're at. Okay. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say with that. And then I'll answer any more questions now in a few minutes. But I'm going to pass on now to Maria, I think. Thank you.
Thanks, Malie. You've given us loads of information there to sift through. I've been kind of jotting a few things down. And I think it's lovely, even just to hear, how, we can be such positive influences for our young people, and they might kind of give off a vibe that they don't really, that we don't have that much influence, but we do, and it's lovely to hear that. I don't want to take up too much time at this section because there are loads of questions that have come in, and I want to give them as much time as possible. But I suppose it's just to look at the supports that are available in the west of Ireland when it comes to supporting our young people. The first one there is our Drug and Alcohol Family Support Service. So I suppose tonight came about through a conversation with Emmet. He was showing me the Planet Youth data. And I said, we're hearing this from some of the parents that we're supporting when it comes to substance use, when it comes to that rejection, whether it's around using or not using, or maybe kind of getting involved maybe in storing or distributing of substances. Well, if I don't, then maybe I'll be rejected, and how a young person might feel around that. So I suppose we support any family members who are impacted by someone else's substance use. And we have a worker in each county. So in Roscommon, we have Noreen Burke. In Galway, we have Robert Dervin, and then we have Bernie Avdich, who covers County Mayo, and all their details are on our website if you're wanting to get in contact with any of them. And then there's the Planet Youth, which Emmet has pointed us to on the website, and it's a hub of resources. I know in the questions some people were asking for the booklets. The Parent Power booklet is available on the Planet Youth website, as are the reports and summaries, of the surveys that have been done throughout the years. There's Mindspace Mayo, who provides support to young people. They're based in Castlebar, but have a number of clinicians who support young people throughout County Mayo. I've put in B Canolta as well. I suppose that's looking at the policy around prevention and addressing bullying within schools, and that's available online if anybody is wanting to have a look at that. There's spunout.ie for young people. There's the Parent Hub as well on our website. All things kind of to do with parenting and substance use, and supports available in the west of Ireland. There's number 4 Youth Service, who are based in Galway City. We've got the Recovery Colleges, Regari, and the Discovery College as well, Discovery College West, which is a support to increase mental well-being for young people aged 12 to 25. There's Parentline, who offer fantastic free support to parents from 10 a.m. until 9 p.m. Monday to Thursday, and from 10 a.m. until 7, I think, p.m. on a Friday. And they have volunteers who work on that helpline if there are any queries in the parenting sphere that you're wanting advice or support around. And then the ISPCC also offer huge resources for young people and for parents and carers also. If there is substance use, there are under 18 substance misuse counsellors as well through the HSE, and their details are available on the Support Me website. And if you are looking to get in contact with anybody and you're having difficulty, feel free to contact us and we can help with that. So I've just gone into a little bit more detail. These slides will be available for anybody who has attended this evening. And I suppose just a few more things that are happening this week that might be of interest. So Emmet has already mentioned the importance of our sleep. That's happening Thursday evening. There is also a neurodiversity and substance use webinar happening on the 12th. So that's Wednesday at 3, from 3 to 4 p.m. There is a webinar as well called Target, Test, Hook and Trap, which looks at how we can prevent exploitation of young people into drug crime. And then I've already mentioned the Task Force Parent Hub, but there is a walkthrough and introduction to that area on our website happening tomorrow at 3. So if you are interested in registering for any of those, you can do so through our website. So I suppose just to not eat into any more time and to look at those questions, I'll stop my share now. But any of these slides that I have put up this evening will be available anyway to you. So.
Thanks for that, Maria.
There's quite a number of questions, so I don't know how. It's probably best to deal with the ones that have come in here.
Well, what I'll do is there's a couple of housekeeping ones, right? So we'll do our best to get through. I don't anticipate we can cover all of this, Malie. So, but I say if we said 15:15, if we go to 20:00, right? From a housekeeping point of view, the webinar is being recorded and all the slides will be available. So we will get those up online. It will take a few days though, because it's an extremely busy week, but we'll have them up and we'll send out an email notification on it to everybody that was registered for the webinar as soon as they go up. I'd anticipate it'll be Monday though next week, if maybe very late this week, but probably Monday next week. So you'll get all the information. And just to say thanks, Malie, for what was a very thorough presentation. There was a load in there that I think people could go back through it again. And I noticed one at the bottom saying, is this recorded so it could be listened back with your child if needed, perhaps. So there's a bit, there's a lot of stuff in there that you can look, and some great tools and some great ideas. So I just wanted to say that, and there's one here that I thought we could just answer and get out of the way quite quickly, which was, sorry, let me just flip it over to this, because I was copying stuff in. Does all this information relate to children in 5th and 6th class? Concerns and issues as a teenager largely raised here, but do these questions relate to the dynamics in that kind of a classroom or group setting as well? Would you say we reach down into that age group?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I actually think it relates to all of our, every age when you think of it, but most specifically towards the kind of, because I mean, teenagers are becoming teenagers so much earlier now. So like definitely from age 11, I would say yes.
Okay, yeah, it's okay. So from a housekeeping point of view, I think we should just do our best to get through as much of these as we can get through, but I don't know if we'll be able to get through them all. But there's some tricky ones. There's some really tricky ones. Would you recommend some kind of coaching or therapy for a boy who's extremely self-conscious, hasn't made a single friend since starting secondary school last year, and how to find a list of resources based in Cork, boy's 13. So would you think there's sometimes a child might need a bit of coaching or life coaching or mentoring around some of this kind of stuff, making
Yeah,
friends?
yeah, because like I think sometimes we just expect that social skills are just going to come naturally, but like, and this is for a child who's neurodivergent.
No, it doesn't say that. No,
Okay,
no,
okay.
not that one. No.
Um, yeah, yeah, I mean, as I said, I don't know, oh yeah, that's another thing that Ella's mom did. The example that I gave was to actually like role play how to start a conversation or that kind of thing. So there are ways of doing that. Yeah, so I don't know if that helps. I'm not sure
Yeah.
which question that was.
Okay. Well, there's no need for you to try and race
Yeah.
through them, Malik, because you've enough to be thinking about. So if I go through them and try and put them, is it wrong to cry with my child if they're upset?
Definitely not. I think you're showing your emotion and you're showing them that you care. And it's not, there's a difference between crying and empathizing with them and then, crying and becoming enraged and wanting to like, and blowing your own fuse. So I think it's a beautiful thing to feel that way for your child and show them.
Okay. And what if my child won't talk to me or acknowledge their social exclusion? So a parent obviously knows that this is what's going on, but the child won't talk about it.
I guess you're trying to see like are there other areas in their life where things are going okay? It's really about the impact of it. How much is it impacting on your child? Um, and I guess trying to maybe find little entry points to being able to because sometimes parents, I think, can expect, oh, my child should have X number of friends, and that's the healthy amount of friends to have. But not every child wants to have that many friends, and it's okay. It's okay if and it's okay if friendships change. That's the thing about teenage friendships; they're very changeable, and yeah.
Well, that leads neatly enough on to this one. I think you sort of answered it, but we'll cover it anyway. It speaks to me a little bit in terms of this, what you're talking about, the dance, the drama, and get kids into other activities and stuff and other interests. So if a boy age 14, seems quite happy on his own in school, he sits in a group at lunchtime, but doesn't meet them outside of school. So he likes his own company in school. Should a parent be worried? Question mark. He has activities outside of school. Doesn't
Not
sound like
if
it to
not
me.
if not if the child is not indicating distress. Sometimes at different ages, like things might become more difficult for a child when they go into secondary school, for instance. But if your child is not indicating that they're not okay or not showing any signs, then it's difficult to kind of step in but you can always check in with them and just kind of see whether they're interested in joining other things or being part of other things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, Joe, there's one here. School refusal creeping in. Maybe my 14-year-old girl feels excluded from her friends, regularly asked to come home early from school. How can I support her through this while not giving into this request? Tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really difficult one. I guess, it's important that, like, it is, as I said, a common humanity thing. Like, it does happen to a lot of teens that they can feel that way. Like, I'm wondering, like, it's obviously having a big impact on your daughter if she wants to avoid school, um, and or come home early. I would, try to kind of turn a new page and say, right, you know, like I do it in terms of scaling. Look, my daughter goes to school across town and we live on the east side. She goes to school in the west. And I'm like, unless you're like an 8 or 9 out of 10 in sickness, I can't come and collect you. So, how bad is it? you know, from a scale of 0 to 10. And I really I want to trust you with this, because I just can't go across town and collect you. That's, you know, so it's like, but if something becomes a pattern of avoidance, that might be the time that you talk to your child maybe about, you know, is it okay if I talk to a teacher about, you know, getting a guidance counselor to support you, or maybe at that rate your child does need to go and speak to a therapist if it's impacting them in that way.
Okay, thank you. Okay, here's a tricky one. Advice for a parent of a 13, 14-year-old is supposed to know she's being alternatively accepted and rejected within a group, right? So what level of rejection is normal or acceptable? And when should I encourage her to pull the plug on friendships, which is a scary prospect for her, obviously. Very
Yeah,
stressful.
and all we can do is if like I mean, my daughter's friendly with a girl that I really don't really would like her to be friends with, but it's kind of like you can't, but it's not like it's just a hard one, because when maybe they're not plentiful with loads of friends, and it's their decision at the end of the day. So what I would do is really get them to tune into their gut instinct, and how does that friend make you feel? And maybe you need to hold on to that friend for the moment, until you meet other more like-minded people. I always say to my daughter, you've got best friends waiting backstage for you right now in the side wings that are going to be so happy to meet you when they do. But it's just you haven't found your tribe yet. You know what I mean? And I don't, you know, and that's what I would say, and very much kind of focus on how that friend makes them feel. Maybe try to promote other friendships if you can, but I don't think you can tell your child don't be friends with that person, because it will fluctuate. Sometimes the stuff my daughter says to me about the friend, I'm like, how could you be friends with her? But I have to keep that to myself, because she's somebody that she needs at the moment. But I think once she finds other people that make her feel better, she'll realize. And already actually I can see some disassociation happening, where it's like I'm just friends, but we're not really that close.
Yeah. But I love the kind of chart you had with, where would you put this person in
Yeah,
your in your circles, so that was really nice way to do that.
yeah.
And it kind of lead on a little bit from that. Sorry, I had the question here and then I misplaced it. It was okay, 17-year-old boy, right? Great kid, just hasn't met his people. So there you go. Sort
Hmm.
of talking a little bit about what you're saying. Primary school was great, lots of friends. Secondary school, not good though. Refuses to reach out to potential connections because of rejection. So he's experienced so much rejection that it's really hard, right? So
Mm.
that's a tricky one, of course. Any thoughts on that?
I think being there with him, helping him to feel validated, um, and just kind of tuning in to kind of figuring out what does what might be most helpful. Is he looking for a solution to this, or is he okay with how things are? Are there other areas of his life that are thriving and are doing okay? It could just be that I think sometimes I've had some clients where I feel like it's not until they get to outside of school, maybe college, university, doing a course or whatever, that they will find more like-minded people. And I think the same of sometimes in primary school, it's not till you get to maybe third year of secondary school that you might find people that you get along with, even if it's one or two. That's all you need.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, listen, I'm conscious that it's getting a bit long in the night. We've gone over a bit over time, as we said, so I'm going to pull the plug in. I apologize, we haven't got to all of these questions. Feel free to email in, and I'll take a look through the sort of stuff that comes, and we'll try and respond to some of it certainly as best we can. It's a really important topic. I think it's something of a novel evening this evening because it's not something that we tend to talk about very much. So I'm really encouraged by all that was said, Malie, really. There's lots of great stuff there that I think parents will find very, very supportive. It might be something we revisit, though. I think we might
Mm,
try and come back and do maybe tune into a couple of these areas a little bit more. There was an interesting question came in around parent feels there's so much obviously for older teens, there's so much revolves around alcohol and pubbing, and they really don't want their children involved in that, but yet that takes them outside of the peer group, and that's something that we might have to have a bit of a look at. So loads of stuff. Have you any last thoughts or words before we
I
pull
just
the
want to
plug in?
say that like be compassionate to yourself as well as a parent. You know, as a parent, it's really, really hard when your kids are coming to you and feeling that way. And we've all felt that pain of feeling like we don't belong. And, you know, you are your child's greatest resource. You know, you really are. And I hope you've gotten one, like, you know, good message for yourself tonight, you know, and also be aware that there are other like adults in a child's life that can also be, it could be an auntie, it could be a grandparent, it could be, you know, there are other things that also make their life rich. I mean, for us, even having a cat is like one of the best things in the world. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, I guess we just have to be creative, but the most important thing is just good enough. That's all we need, is good enough. And thank you so much. And it might be good, Emmet, if we kept a record of the questions, not necessarily the people who asked the questions, but just the questions in case that they were going, you know, that we would know what are important things that are coming up for people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we
Yeah,
will do that. And there's loads of comments and questions and stuff that came in on email, but also stuff that came in the Q&A, and a lot of it's very, very positive. So sand tray therapy is amazing. 2 of my kids have done it, play therapy. They found it excellent. Right. So there's a few good
100%, I
suggestions.
agree.
Yeah, there's a few good
Yeah.
suggestions in here as well. Yeah. Okay, thanks everybody for coming. Much appreciated. We'll get the information out to you in the coming days, possibly be about a week. And say good night and ask Orla to hang up on the webinar, if that's okay.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks.